You're listening to the Digital Deep Dive, where we tackle the newest trends, strategies, and pain points shaping growth across the digital landscape. From Amazon and D2C to international expansion, join our host and e-commerce leaders across multiple industries for in-depth discussions on how to maximize your brands in the digital arena. Now, here's your host, Aaron Conant.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Digital Deep Dive podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Conant, and today we have a request to come back to Justin here. Justin Ruiss is from the BWG strategy, now BWG Global stack as a whole, does a ton around tech, media, telecom. We were having a great conversation around, CTV, streaming TV, where it's going, the evolution, and there's a big shift that way right now. Lots of questions around retail media dollars. Where do they get spent? How do we spend them? And on a previous episode, I had Adam Epstein, who's at GG, who's built like an ad tech platform that layers on top of the Amazon Marketing Cloud to power STV and all, the ads that go through lots of the streaming platforms as a whole. So this is a topic that's come up over and over again. And just last time around, I had an awesome conversation with Justin. So I thought, I'll bring him back. Let's chat again. But before we jump into that, Justin, you want to do like background on yourself? And then
yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me back. I'm so happy that it was requested upon request. That's great.
The actual request was like once a quarter in this space. Can you have Justin back on to level set where media is at? And I'm like, that's a great idea. Yes, we can do it. Yes, we can do it.
As long as you just bring coffee and I'm there.
Yeah.
So I am the head of forum research at BWG Global. I cover areas under media, e-com, leisure and activity, and entertainment now. So I host around 30 to 32 forums a month covering the span of all of those categories, clocking in somewhere around in the 350 range for the year here. And I talk to a number of different providers, whether it's vendors, service providers, brands, intermediaries, and all the like to get an understanding of what's happening at a high level and hopefully even down into the weeds. So happy to be here, Aaron, and happy to jump in.
Yeah. So where do you see, so that's part of the recap that we want to do this quarterly update, but where do you see CTV, streaming TV, like where is this going? Like any trends that you see popping up? And then, obviously I try to talk to 20 to 30 organizations a week in the digital space. So, feel free to throw questions back my way, but I want to pick your brain for a while here.
Yeah, no, like I love the dialogue. It's great. I think, and you probably will echo a lot of this, I think one of the big things that we're hearing is there's supply and there's oversupply in the CTV space. Amazon coming on board, Netflix really ramping up in the area has created a lot of inventory in the CTV space on two different spectrums. So the premium style inventory that runs against, your Fallouts or your Rings of Power or those types of programming, or on the other side is the free ad-supported TV side, the FAST side. FAST is very easy to set up as a channel, and that's just been expanding. A lot of the conversation last year was around, is FAST going to start to cull? Are we going to start to see a contraction of the amount of FAST channels? Because who really needs like a channel that's dedicated to like just Monk or The Mentalist or something along those lines? And turns out catalog is cheap. And turns out targeting is really effective in CTV. So if you can get the viewership and you can garner a lot of good data, you can really be effective in sort of running programmatic ads on the FAST side of things. With that being said, one of the other big caveats that we've heard is with there being oversupply, you're starting to see CPMs sort of cool off and not really jumping up or scaling up in very large quantities at this point. Suffice to say, will CPMs remain there? I don't know. It could be a situation of CPMs starting to scale up, maybe as some of these platforms start to get more live viewership or live events or sports, et cetera, and more programmatic guarantees or more private marketplace deals start to materialize. It's a question of where those will end up going, but one of the best quotes I heard right now, coming out of first quarter into second was, it's a great time to be a buyer for CTV. So really good trajectory there from the advertiser side on that front.
Yeah, it's interesting because for the longest time, I had a lot of companies just being afraid to even jump into it. And a lot of it's because they were over-indexed on everything else that was going on and the question marks around the channel as a whole.
Yeah.
But once they started to view it closer to from the conversations I'm having around being a performance marketing channel and to kind of approach it differently than you have traditional, TV ads, which is like I can get hyper focused and hyper targeted to a very specific audience. And at this point in time, it's not as expensive as you'd think it is because, like you're saying, the amount of inventory that's out there. There is some, if you have enough overlap in a certain demographic in a certain channel, yeah, okay, they start to go up, but just shift a little bit to where your target demographics at. Because to your point, there's probably a channel out there there probably is.
Now, look, I agree with you. It's way more mid funnel than it is if you traditional marketing funnel, right? Way more mid than it is top of funnel. Like, hey, reach and frequency was the best thing I could ever get with traditional television. Now you can get reach and you can get data. Like you can be effective in driving two prongs of the scenario where it's, platform buy or, programming buy, and you can be so data driven and so targeted. So it's really effective in both of those areas. I think the areas that are concerning though are like frequency capping or making sure that the ad experience is favorable. I don't know how many times I've been targeted. I must be really like in the market for a HELOC, like a home equity line of credit, because I get a lot of those coming my way. But there needs to be some control on some of those areas and maybe some cleaning up of the pipes, which I'm sure there's some people working on it that are doing some really fascinating stuff there. I think it's probably a little too expensive right now for your local advertisers to get involved, like your, law firm that's telling you to call and, if you've been injured. But that's where I see a lot of good floodgate coming and seeing those types of advertisers pour in from a local perspective, making it really, really strong, making that category really, really strong.
What about the content piece? So is another channel where there's more content needed, right? And I just did with what is his name, Eric Scheinkopf from the Desire Company, and just a couple podcasts ago, and he's developed basically a mini studio that's portable, lined up with experts, where you can go actually shoot a high quality video to be used as streaming TV ad, but also they can slice and dice it for TikTok or Insta, and Meta, whatever platform, even direct to consumer. You can use it for Amazon. So it's a different take on getting content, because the other piece of the ad, especially on the streaming side, right, CTV side as well, is people are expecting a TV ad, right? And it can't just be a garbage random ad, right, or a product demo. But again, that's a side of it where people, they don't have the time, the expertise, or the money to crank out tons of content. Like, are you seeing the same thing?
There's a little, and this is funny because there's a little bit of like, we are ramping up our production budgets. We are ramping down our promotional budgets. It's like kind of odd, like a little bit of like, I've heard that. Yeah, I've heard that once before. But in the wake of, and I think this would probably be true, this is a little bit of like assumption on this part, but I think in the wake of so much short form video really penetrating, I mean, if you look at the YouTube Shorts penetration there, it's super strong. And seeing the targetability of CTV, now that you have a little bit of this economic turmoil that's going on, and that's probably the understatement of the century, but you have a little bit of this uncertainty that's circulating. The production side could be favored in exactly what you're saying, Aaron, like slicing it up, creating paid opportunities for reels and shorts, and even TikTok before, before the hammer drops on where that goes. But then even effectively using it in CTV in areas like that, because I think the creative does really need to resonate really well at this point. So it was odd to hear it from one of the forum guests saying our promotional budgets are down, but our production budgets are oddly up. But they know, I think a lot of it is exactly what you're saying. They know that they have to create something that's super engaging. The viewership's there. You could prove, the data is telling you that your targetability, it's right here. Your viewership is there. And especially on the short form video side, you want to be able to capture a lot of that sentiment before somebody, swipes up. So it's an interesting time for that. It's one of the weirder things that I've heard more recently, but I believe it.
Yeah, it's just from that standpoint of, I mean, the creation of content has been, spread all over the place, whether, hey, it is, it's a video created specifically for your Amazon detail page, or it could be an overarching, just normal, cable TV ad, right? Or you also have Meta or Insta, you have influencers, and it was this, hey, we need as much content as we can possibly have.
Yeah.
And there wasn't really an organized front on what we're going to do and how we're going to do it, which is, fine if you're a smaller brand, right? You grow from Etsy to a direct to consumer site, you're doing $1 million a year, it's paying all the bills, you're happy, sure, who really cares? But when you get to the point where you're a brand with brand guidelines and trademark, patent, all these other things, that copyright issues, everything that goes into being a brand, like there's a level of control that needs to be put in place. And it's fine. I think people are finally at a point where they're getting a directive overall look on, okay, holistically for marketing, these are the 10 types of content that we need. And here's the type of, or the amount of content we need. And then here's all the platforms we're going to go hit it with. And that's finally all coming up underneath one. And what they're finding is, to do that, I mean, kind of what you're saying, I'm going along with what you're saying about production budgets. As I'm connecting dots here, I totally see how production budgets have to go up.
Yeah.
Because it's not just disparate everywhere, where it's hitting, a marketing budget over here and a sales budget over here and a retail media budget over here. It's finally like, hey, we're going to bring this all underneath marketing, get a production budget, and we're going to go execute and actually have a plan for the content that we're going to get.
The dream.
Yeah.
The dream.
Someday.
But yeah, it is wild to hear a lot of. It's funny, the mentioning of retail media on that front too, because I think a lot of the consolidation efforts on retail media, digitally within like a brand's marketing umbrella, I think some of that's coming not so much to fruition, but I think it's more this idea of the left hand is starting to know what the right is doing. And I think that's a huge unlock, right? I think audio is one of the channels where you start to see a lot of that materialize, is sort of bridging the gap between like digital and in store, because it's a digital channel that operates in store, and it's more prevalent in stores than, let's say, like digital signage. I think that's a little more high tech in some instances, but I think that's going to be one of those bridging moments of saying, okay, we have digital budgets and we have these shopper dollars and these trade dollars that exist too. And we want to be able to effectively hit customers, and audio is a great way to kind of real-time target, or at least get a little bit better of a targetability aspect in play there. So I think you start to see a little bit more of that bridging happen there. So exactly to the point of like kind of living under one umbrella and sort of not, it's like an open floor plan instead of everybody living in one room, like one separate room. So
yeah, I mean, it's going to be fun to watch how everything plays out. I think from the Amazon standpoint, how much customer data they have, their marketing cloud, and then these platforms that allow you to buy inventory on, other networks as well.
Yeah. The offsite capabilities are huge.
Yeah.
I think, it's funny that you mentioned AMC. I think in the age that we're in right now, this 2Q, everybody scratching their heads moment. I think AMC becomes a little bit of that shining bright spot for a lot of marketers and a lot of merchants at this point, because I think it is a pretty unique offering. Like their DSP is getting better. Even we're hearing from folks that like it's not as expensive as some of the other bigger ad tech players out there. Naturally, Walmart's doing what they can with Walmart Connect. They're being competitive there, but if you look at their moves, they're raising their minimums, right? For retail media inclusion, whereas Amazon is creating more tools. And I think AMC is one of those points where people can get in there and start to toy around with it and say, okay, what can we, what can we hit with a hammer here to make it work? What can we do in this toy box that'll help us to, generate lift or improve ROAS or whatever, whatever performance metric you're looking for, which I think is a I won't call it a breath of fresh air right now, but I think it's an option that marketers can use when, say, the tariffs start to take an impact and you're sitting there looking down the barrel and the only thing you can do is increase price or pass on the cost to the consumer. I think having a tool set, or at least the appearance or the option of a tool set, makes for some favorable option, like,
I mean, yeah, I think I don't want to say that's the trust of Amazon, because that pushes it a little far because everybody's pretty skeptical. But the fact that, the original issue was, oh, I don't want Amazon to steal my customer.
right.
Everybody's realizing Amazon's already got your customer. They're shopping. This is just the reality. They're not stealing your customer. They're shopping both places. And so the other huge change that I saw is when you can create the custom audiences, you can put a pixel on your site, drop it in, do an exact lookalike custom audience around your ideal shopper. But then it used to be you'd have to drive back to Amazon. Like you don't have to do that anymore. Use the DSP and drive them back to your direct consumer site. I mean, as long as you're not driving them to another like major retailer, like this is an ad tech platform they want you to use.
Yeah.
And that's they had a massive unlock where they went that route. Then I think the streaming TV piece of it that they're rolling out as well is just going to be monumental. Like,
yeah, I agree.
It's going to be crazy. Like and how hyper targeted you can get.
And they have, one of the things, it's funny because I cover film and movie exhibitors, right? So not tangential to media, but almost in like the IP sense. But one of the funny things that came out of it was, or more interesting things that came out of it was, everybody on this forum was not so much ranting and raving, but they went to CinemaCon earlier this last month, I believe, or April. They walked away and they said Amazon with MGM crushing it, sticking to theatrical. So, putting a theatrical window in place. They have tons of content coming out. They're adhering to, the guidelines of the people were like very favorable about how they were, or how precious they were treating, the MGM's IP. And I think that's kind of one of those indications there to exactly your point, Aaron. They know what a favorable viewing experience looks like. And if you can layer in a programmatic solution to help make the viewership even more favorable from there, I think it's a home run. Add in football, add in any other kind of live, events that they can tack onto. It is a platform that could take on YouTube. That's the way I view it. I know it's powerful.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I'm not arguing with you. I'm not like, I agree. I think Google and YouTube have let the world pass them by. I think I understand, YouTube as a whole, where it's at, its size, its scale, but the focus on the customer that Amazon has and create the ability to create content that they're designing and pushing out, it's going to be phenomenal in 5 years. It's going to be totally phenomenal. And then the Google piece with like Google's got more data on us than anybody else. So how does OpenAI come on the side? And, how do they not launch a similar TikTok? Like, what's going on here? Like,
or buy it.
just,
Well, or I guess they can't. They're not probably in the position to buy anything these days.
no,
But,
no.
so you know what, Aaron? That brings up another point, because a lot of conversations, and this has come to a head, especially in the search landscape. There's three, or I guess there's two letters in a word that continuously dominate our search conversations: AI overview. And you look at something like AI overview, and I think it's very indicative of where search behavior is going. If you're not familiar with AI overview, jump into Google, type in, whatever. I'm a comic book guy, right? Like, what year was Deadpool, first released? I should know that. I think it's 91. But AI overview will give you everything that you need in the SERP right up front, so that you really don't have to click into any links. It's a zero SERP kind of environment. From a brand perspective or a publisher perspective, scary, right? There's no real kind of direct click through. And that's what brands are looking for, right? They're paying the CPC. They want the click through rate. They want Google to funnel you into the right area. And look, there's sponsored links on the page, ad nauseum, pretty much these days, that govern a lot of that kind of behavior. But AI overview is a tool now that can chew up a lot of traffic, especially if you're not intent driven, right? So I think it's going to be one of those situations where, how does Google then end up monetizing AI overview or the real estate of the page in a strategic way, so that the advertisers and the publishers don't get so, let's say, upset over kind of the search journey. But it does create a situation of like, hey, what's Perplexity working on then? They have their own, they're looking to explore advertising in these certain ways. And it leaves a lot of questions of, is Google in this position now where they've created an environment where things really can't be viewed from a CPC basis, but maybe from a CPM one? So I don't know. It's a lot of interesting topics that come up.
Fundamentally, yes, search is completely changing, and I don't know where Google ends up with it. They let OpenAI, ChatGPT just blow by them. I've converted to be a primary user, right? That's my go-to now, is I plug ChatGPT into Siri, right? And just ask away. And we're getting to a point of voice commerce, because that old, I'd say old, this is the 1-year-old adage, right? So old adage in these tech times, which is Google is a search engine, ChatGPT is an answer engine.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be bothered with going through 1,000 different to try to just put it all together and help me plan things. And on the back end, you mentioned Perplexity. I was just chatting. I met them at Shop Talk, a company called Firmly. I'm going to have them on as an episode. I don't know if you've chatted with them before, Firmly AI.
Not yet, but I'm excited to.
So they have built a plugin there in Perplexity. So the strategic partnership with Perplexity, who's helped rolling it out, to do a plug-in to the back end. And the other side is an API connection into your direct consumer site. So you can be on the platform and say, hey, I'm looking for, size 10 Converse All-Stars blue. And it will go out to the Converse website, check inventory within the app. You're not leaving Perplexity. It'll render it, right? What the actual site and inventory would you like to buy? And if you say yes, it will execute the purchase on the direct to consumer side as if it's you. So it takes your data from Perplexity that you've logged in on, credit card, everything, and it goes, buys it, puts in all the information, goes through all the steps, execute it, and then it just shows up at your door. So then you take it one step further, which is, I do this all the time. If I'm in the car and you break out ChatGPT and you have a conversation with it, the kids love it, right? You can just turn it on to, it's conversation mode, essentially. And you can just talk back and forth to it about, oh, hey, how far is it to the moon, right? Could a cow actually jump over the moon? Like these funny things you can do with kids. And it will keep going back and forth. Um, but that firmly piece is the next level is just connecting into all ad tech.
Yeah.
Where on the back end, you can just say, hey, would you like to purchase now? Yes. Okay. Give us your, and I don't know if there's a reference code. I'm going to have them on an episode. I want to break it all down. Like you're going to say, oh, confirm your purchase by giving us your
Right.
top
How'd you find
10.
us? Yeah. Like,
Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That the old space balls.
yes. See, it's funny that that's where you go with this. And my head was like, what you described is the advertising version of like Blade Runner, where it's like, oh shoot, do we know how humans really are? Or can we just have replicants that walk around who look like humans? This is like people that look like advertisements, but actually make the purchase for you.
But that's crazy, right? Like,
what? Absolutely.
So you just do everything. Like the AI assistants will be there, right? This agentic AI, right? It's an agent that's going out and doing stuff for you. They're getting to that next level. It's crazy.
It is getting to scary types of effectiveness. And I think that's where you're going to start to see more of these startups. It's three guys in a garage, three guys or gals in a garage running 36 agents that can effectively do everything, like 90% do everything really well, with everyone keeping a monitor on it so that nothing hallucinates. I think that's where you're going to see a lot of like the startups actually happen, but it's scary how effective a lot of this stuff is.
Yeah, and it will guide you the whole path. So I was talking to about these podcasts, and you just dump into ChatGPT. Hey, here's a scenario. I record on Zoom. I need to put into CapCut to take off the front end, back end. I need to have the same intro, outro, I give it all the prompts it needs to. Can you automate this for me? And it's like, I can't currently, but if you do these changes, if you're open to these changes, then I can fully automate it for you and help you write to GPT. If not, here's everything you can do using your current platform. So I'm like, that's it. This is the exact answer I wanted.
Do
I want to make changes?
Less human.
Yeah. but I'm also like, at the end, I'm like, thank you.
right. And save.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, the other thing does is all these learn about you. And so this will all, when everything starts to blend together, right? When the matrix is fully unveiled and it's all talking, it will give me the most relevant ads.
Yeah.
On
I think
any platform.
I wonder though, the question then becomes like, because everybody's fearful that, the description of all of this is going to be the downfall of the website or the mass firing or layoffs of departments. But I do get a sense of like, if a lot of the back end is figured out from an ad tech perspective, DSPs and SSPs can harness a lot of the AI mystery here and make a lot of the purchasing journey or the media buying journey as simplified as possible for media buyers to execute, publishers to execute, et cetera. Does that then put the emphasis back on creative? And in a very like optimistic way, I'm sure people will be like, you're you're out of your mind. But in a very optimistic way, there's sort of this, hey, everything's figured out on the ad tech side. We don't really need to throw a monkey wrench into that. But what we do need to figure out is brand building and storytelling and creative and what's going to capture a lot of good sentiment. Because then the table, the table stakes are there. AI can be really effective in delivering you like a very good, not good picture or video. So human intervention is so necessary to grab attention and mind share of people. This is almost like one of those like reverse scenarios of like all the artists kind of sitting here saying like, oh, AI is going to destroy us, but actually maybe it kind of invigorates them and raises the bar for even better creative across the board. But
Yeah, I
I
mean,
could be,
you
a
no,
million percent wrong.
all of these in my mind, all these things all of them have to be trained.
Yeah.
They have to be trained. And so, if we look 20 years down the line from now, like obviously life, but over the next like decade or so, as this evolves and as people gain their trust in it, you're still going to have to train it. If you don't train it with the best quality data or the best brand guidelines or the most robust infrastructure or whatever you're doing for the back end, if you're not training it and taking the time to train it, it's going to totally derail.
Yeah.
So we did.
I want to interject there because from a gaming perspective, this is a lot of the biggest problem. Like from a UGC, like a user generated content perspective, this is a brand nightmare, right? So if somebody wants to come into your sandbox, like a Roblox or an Unreal Editor and Fortnite or any of these types of platforms, if you want to include the brand in there, it's like you can't, like Star Wars, for example, like you can't have somebody be like, I'm a barber for Wookiees, like, and shave them, right? That's not like what they do. Wookiees are, they're giant furry beasts, but like you you would have a lot of really strict brand guidelines in there that would basically ruin a lot of the creative fun of what the game is trying to offer. And I think that's kind of one of those areas that you say is like it needs to train on this stuff to better understand like, okay, give me the lore here, give me the understanding of what we can and can't do. And I get worried that there's more can't than can. And that kind of ruins a lot of the experience and shies the brands away from that type of stuff all like whole cloth. So it's a little bit of like a double-edged sword there because I get concerned that those platforms, which I wouldn't say desperately need brand intervention, but it would seriously be welcome. That could be a deterrent or something that could hamper a lot of good positivity. But
Nah. Well, I mean, before are the questions you have for me? This has been fun. I know I've been picking your brain for a while. I mean, we did go all the way from like creative and retail media, streaming TV to Wookiees, like when Wookiee barbers, which I think a lot of people appreciate, right? Like
it's not on your digital deep dive bingo card. I guess my question for you, Aaron, is the level of uncertainty that we're experiencing. I couldn't tell you how many times we don't see the people on our forums. They're not video, but I could hear the shoulders shrug if that makes sense. Like everybody's kind of sitting there saying like, I don't really know. I have no idea, but everybody's very hopeful. And I think the timeline people are sort of grasping at straws of like what the timeline to normalization looks like. Is that anything that you're kind of picking up or hearing or is there any kind of signal towards positivity that would lend itself to that? That's a big question, but I what are you hearing?
Yeah, so what I'm hearing? This is like COVID in a lot of cases all over again, but it's not. And what's frustrating is it's not just container cost.
Yeah.
Which at some point in time they knew everything's going to get resolved in container pricing. So when COVID hits, like it went from like 2,500 to $37,000 for a container. It's completely ridiculous, right? But they do it eventually. Things would get worked out, and so they're likening it to that. Is we don't know when we're going to get product. We don't know if we can bring it in. What's the differential, the differentiating factor, I should say, right now is passing on the price increases as a whole. And there is, at this point in time, there's optimism that it will be resolved. The end result, nobody knows. And you're right. That's one of the biggest questions that people are bringing up right now. That they're struggling with over and over again is scenario planning. So I would say 80% of the people I talk to. So what is that? Somewhere between, 16 and 24 a week. They're just talking scenario planning.
Yeah.
That's just the reality. What is the plan? Tariffs were resolved at this level, at this time, at this level, at this time, never resolved. That's what's going on. And then what does that do? There's a giant hold, a giant pullback because nobody knows. And they're trying to store up cash in case they actually have to do. And then they wait for how many retailers are actually going to take a pass through, how much are they going to pass through the end consumer? And then if that all gets passed through, that just means, overall, expendable cash goes down because every item they buy costs more. There's a lot of apprehension out there. But I think, it seems like June, which nobody wants to say they're halfway through the year. June is where the feeling think it's all going to be worked out. Yeah, hopefully sooner. But I mean, what are we at? Almost May now.
If that's the case, it's going to be a really
pull back on spend, new partners. I've had a few people like just reduction in staff. They're saying it's the tariffs, but I think that was already planned in the first place. And then scenario planning. That's what everybody's doing right now. And so
the break glass in case of emergency plans is like,
yes, exactly. Well, that was a blast, my friend. That was so much fun. If at least quarterly, if not more often.
Yeah, tune in next time, right? Yeah, I'm happy to jump on. It's always fun to talk media and talk e-com and
Wookiee barbers. I mean,
yeah. Right. Never
awesome,
tell me the odds. Just tell me how much to take off.
Yeah. Love it. Well, that's it. This episode of the Digital Deep Dive. Thanks everybody for listening in.